I'm day 4 into my quarantine here in South Korea, and it's a mandatory quarantine. And I've got 6 days left. So today is a Tuesday. I'm gonna get out next Monday at noon. I thought the room looked a little plain, so I got a cat poster. It's pretty epic. So I'm actually going through a 3rd wave. So over this weekend, we had like the highest cases that we've ever had. Here in South Korea, we're still battling it out. And here I am, more than halfway through 2021, and I'm stuck here in my room and I can't leave. So this is my quarantine app here. So twice a day, I have to actually self-diagnose myself and check my temperature, whether I'm coughing, whether I have a sore throat, whether I'm short of breath. Twice a day, I have to fill this out. But what's more interesting about this app is for anyone who has come into close contact with someone that is a confirmed case of coronavirus, this app tracks sensitive information such as location, identification information, and I have to leave my GPS on all the time, and I have to leave this app on all the time so that they can track my whereabouts and make sure I don't leave my house. If I were to leave my house, not that I ever would, there would be a really big fine. Of course, it's the irresponsible thing to do, so I'm sitting tight here in my room. It's not too bad, but it couldn't have come at a worse time. We just got done with 3 weeks at the brewery. We're actually still constructing the brewery, and this is week 4, and week 4 is the hardest week, and I won't be able to be there to monitor any of the progress of the brewery construction. And so my wife has taken over since last Friday, and it's a little bit stressful for her because she has to get up to speed real quick, and a lot of the things I handed over to her without really being able to explain what it is that she needs to do and what it is she needs to be well versed in. So I'm sure it's a big challenge for her, and I feel really bad for her, but I know she's going to be able to make it through. She's a smart lady. So this is how Gia and I have been working, mostly through the phone as she is at the work site. 1,000. How much total, could you measure how much total space is there? I'm battling with some inner demons here in my room. There's like so much stuff I want to help to get done, but given the circumstances, I'm really just locked into just working on my computer. And as a result, there's not a whole lot that I can do to help for the brewery construction process. Tonight at 2:30 a.m., we're going to be receiving the tanks tonight. At 3 a.m., the tanks are going to come because our brewery space is in a really busy part of town. So we can't really have like a container truck unloading during the day where there's a lot of traffic coming through. So we'll be unloading the tanks at 3 a.m. when the traffic is basically down to a minimum. And hopefully we won't run into too many problems. Jihei is going to be there and I won't be able to be there. So we recruited 3 members from our gym to help out. And our carpenter, who is also a huge help for us, he's helping us out in areas where he doesn't really need to help us, but he's also going to be helping us, as well as a forklift operator. So between the 6 of them, they're going to have to be able to figure this stuff out. But we have a huge problem with the tanks, and the problem with the tanks is that we're constrained by the width of our door. So our door is only 1,800 millimeters wide. It's a standard double door, and it's about 2.18 meters tall. So the height isn't high enough to let the tanks come in upright. So we'll have to put the tanks on the side. And to ship them in, some of the tanks are so wide that they'll just barely fit. So we had to build 2 more wooden pallets so that we can put the tanks down onto these pallets. The tanks obviously can't be on the floor because it'll scratch up the tanks. And then while they're on those pallets, we'll be shifting this forklift into the store, get the tanks in. Brewing floor is actually raised up off the ground, so the forklift can't drive up onto the floor. Before they go up onto the brewery floor, we'll have to upright the tanks like this. Then we'll pass the tank over from a big forklift to a little forklift, like a little handheld forklift, which will be waiting on top of the raised platform. And that's how we're gonna have to shovel the tank off to their location. So there's a total of 9 tanks, and there's a lot of issues that could arise when we're putting the tanks up and putting the tanks down. I really hope that the forklift drivers are capable of doing the work, because if they mess up, if they were to drop one of the tanks, which would be the worst case scenario, and if that tank were to break, it could take probably about 2 months for the manufacturer to manufacture a new one, and another month for the tank to arrive here. So a total of 3 months that it would take for us to replace that tank. And if it's one of the important tanks of the brew house, it could be that we'd be having trouble brewing for another, at least give or take 3 months, not to mention the extra expense of buying a new tank and shipping it over here. So today has to go smooth, like it has to go real smooth. So I'm really nervous about today. I had trouble sleeping last night, but once it's over, All right, it is 2 9:49 a.m. and the crew should be assembled at the store. So I'm gonna give them a call and watch from my room. Hey, how's it going?
I just came.
Oh geez, is everybody there?
No, Sai's not here.
I think it'll be okay.
Oh my god. What is
애들 진짜. 저기 우리 컨테이너. Oh my god. What is this?
So this is our first of two 40-foot container trucks that we would have to move into our brewing space today. This first truck only contains one of the actual brew tanks. So in total we have 9 tanks along with all sorts of other pipes and other miscellaneous products that are going to be shipped in with the first truck. So early on, trying to move the first tank, we reached our very first problem. The tank was actually bolted down to the ground using nails, and at the time, I think no one realized that it was bolted down. The forklift operator was a little bit worried that it might be a weight problem, so we tried to use force to try to budge the tank using the forklift. What we soon found out was that the tank was bolted down by a specific nail that couldn't just be wrenched open using an ordinary wrench. This is our first problem. They sent these tanks. What they failed to tell us is that they bolted it down with special nails. So quite a long time to unscrew the nail, but because it requires a special tool to take the nail out. Luckily, we had a carpenter here with us. If he wasn't there, we would have had to send these tanks back. But he didn't have the perfect tool. He just had a tool that kind of, sort of works. So the first nail that he took out took a little bit over 10 minutes. And upon thoroughly examining the tank, we realized that this tank was bolted down by a total of 16 nails. So this here was our first problem.
You know, we only took out like 2 nails.
That's fine, he's just gonna have to wait.
Yeah. I mean, he's here from like 2:40, so the hourly rate is still going.
It's fine, there's nothing we can do.
They nailed the side of the rocks, so I think there's like 15 more.
Can we not get more wrenches in there? Can we get more people in there?
Yeah, just like 3 people working, but it's just really hard to work. Here comes in again.
Okay. Coronavirus! Just trying to get the first tank out took us about 1 hour. But with enough persistence, we were able to get the tank loose, and so started the unloading of the tanks. We had 9 total tanks that we'd have to remove in 2 different containers. And it was a slow and grueling process. Yeah, the streets are totally empty. Seeing as how it's 3 a.m., there's not a whole lot of people awake. Luckily, the first tank only had 1 tank and just extra supplies like the kegs and other small materials that we could easily ship out. The second truck is where we spent most of our time unloading. Just unloading the first truck took 1.5 hours, but we're very happy that we were able to get it done. Let me just read you some of these messages. Forklift guy struggling, but got the nails out, but we can't unload. Too heavy, says the carpenter. To which I replied, we finally got it, and now I have some photos to show you guys. That is our tank. We're gonna be making beer with that tank. That is still the same tank. That is a very big tank. And last photo, the tank in all its glory. So our strategy at first is to just unload all of the trucks onto the street. And then after all of the trucks are unloaded, we would begin working on moving the cargo into the store.
First of the 2 trucks on its way out, and lorry number 2 has arrived.
The second truck took a lot of manual labor to unload the tanks. It's very difficult to forklift the heat exchanger off because it wouldn't stand very well when it was lifted on the forklift. So we engaged in some dangerous maneuvers to be able to balance the heat exchanger onto the forklift. Junyon had apparently had a lot of previous experience using a hand pallet, which we were surprised to find out.
Stop!
His random skill really helped out for us that day when we were unloading the trucks.
That looks strong.
We were running way behind schedule, and so we had to move the truck so we could stop blocking the road. It was almost 6 a.m. and we hadn't even started moving the materials into the brew house. And they're still unloading the tanks. It's 5 a.m. now. Sun's starting to rise. Luckily there's still no cars, but the cars were becoming more and more plentiful, so we had to move fast before the morning traffic kicked in. The sun is now up and cars are starting to come out. It's a little past 6 a.m. I've got some snacks which are holding me through. Louis, I don't know what that is. It's like a cookie brownie though. It's pretty good.
The final piece.
By the time the last tank was unloaded, it was about 7 a.m., so the sun had already risen. And now we could begin the process of moving the tanks into the brew house. It was a very tight space to get these tanks through the door. Once the tanks were in, we had to tip them upright and then set them up onto the elevated brew space. So the manufacturer was really clear that you had to lift the tanks while also supporting the legs, and to definitely not lift the tank using only the holes at the top of the tank. Unfortunately, since I wasn't there, this is how we move the tanks in the brew house.
Are you going to CrossFit today?
No.
I need to figure out if that's a hot liquor tank or a cold water tank, but there's no reference photo for the cold liquor tank in the brochure.
Listen, just measure the length of the tank. The hot liquor tank is 3.3 meters tall. The cold liquor tank is 2.5 meters.
2.3, 2.5. Okay.
Yeah, that should immediately identify which one's which.
This is the biggest piece, I think. It's the mission to get through the door.
This is the most difficult one.
The most difficult one, right?
Yes.
This hot liquor tank was the biggest tank that we had in the whole shipment. It was so big that it was shipped on its side. Hard one to hoist it. The morning traffic was starting to kick in, so we needed some traffic control. By 8 a.m. we were down to the last 3 tanks.
What, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces in.
Everyone was starting to get really tired. And for sure, we had no idea it would take this long. It ended up taking 7 hours to move all the tanks. In our estimates, we were thinking that maybe it would take about 3 hours. So the workload was a lot
Careful,
longer
Saeed. No.
than we had expected. And what would it be without one more problem?
Stop.
As we were loading the last 3 tanks, the pallet finally broke. So for the last 2 tanks, we had to find a way to lift the tank without. Nonetheless, we were able to finish the moving of the tanks, and thus concludes tank day. By the time we were done, it was 9:45 a.m., 7 hours after we had started. And so everyone went back home to take a nice nap.